This presentation is brought to you by Arizona State University's Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability and a generous investment by Julianne Wrigley.
And if you think about it, your problems, your response to the problems of garbage, of toxic air, polluted water was that these were outcomes of wealth creation. And that what you really needed to do was to create more wealth to be able to deal with those problems. And so you constantly found solutions, technology solutions, to be able to deal with the problems that were emerging, the environmental problems that were emerging. You had money to invest in cleaning, but because you didn't look for big solutions at that time, you remained behind the problem. And that really is what I illustrated in the case of air pollution. I can go on and on talking about every environmental problem that the Western societies think that they have licked, but they haven't. You just think that it has gone away. We all think it has gone away, but it hasn't, till it reemerges, because you find that there is a new toxin in the air, there is a new bug in the water, there is something in our food that shouldn't be there, and we are constantly learning to be able to invest more and more to be able to deal with the problem of pollution. So your air may not be as black as ours, and your water may not be as polluted, seemingly polluted as ours, but it is still, we know that the toxins are still there. And the only way that you can keep ahead of the problem, or not even ahead, but you can think that the problem has gone away, is through money, technology, and finding a way to sort of sweep it under the carpet. And that's really what I call the middle-class environmentalism. I've stopped calling it the Western environmentalism because I see that happening increasingly in my country as well. That is what I call middle-class environmentalism. So if we don't like plastic and we move to jute, we don't get rid of plastic totally. We just sort of somehow find a way to be able to manage the problem for the moment. And so in that sense, as I keep telling my own community in India, that we are garbage managers, nothing more than that. But if you think about the environmental movement in India and how it began from a very remote village far away in the Himalayas, where the women of a village called Raini actually stopped woodcutters from cutting the forests. And that was, in some senses, the beginning, that was an environmental movement. But because we didn't understand them, we interpreted that environmental movement as a movement of women stopping the woodcutters because they wanted the trees for conservation. But actually, the women of Raini had nothing to do with conservation. What they were fighting for was the right over the tree. They were fighting, it was a political movement which was asking for the right for self-determination because they said the trees were most important for their livelihoods. That local economy was dependent on the forests. And they said they wanted the rights to manage the forest. They wanted the ability and the right to take the decision even to cut the forest. So it was a movement which was essentially asking and demanding that it is not about conservation alone. It is not about protecting trees alone. It is about changing the way we do development. But we didn't think about that. We, in India as well, lost track of those movements. Till now, they are re-emerging in the form of the million pollution mutinies that I spoke about. So I think this is the model of environmentalism that we must seek. The middle-class environmentalism does not go far enough in reinventing growth without pollution or progress with well-being. It will keep us behind the problem, and it will not work. And I think combined with this, and this is my last point, is that we also need to understand that we can never deal with environmental challenges if we don't see the need for innovative ideas and technologies for the future. Let me explain. I come from a country where we are drowning in our own excreta because we just cannot get our pollution systems to work. But that's not because we don't want our pollution systems to work. It's also because those technologies for pollution control were developed for people when they were rich and they could afford it. But the technologies for sustainable development today are therefore too unaffordable for vast numbers of people, and they will not work. So what we need is a completely new generation thinking of those affordable and sustainable technologies. In our world, if you cannot make it affordable, it will not be sustainable. And that is very much part of what we need to do for the future.
This presentation is brought to you by Arizona State University's Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability for educational and non-commercial use only.